It's safe to say that one of the monuments of the long-distance triathlon racing calendar is Challenge Roth. And indeed, 2019 is the 32nd edition of this most famous of German events. And each year there are some 3,500 individual competitors plus another 600 relay teams. And the demand for those precious entry slots is arguably as fierce as the racing will be this coming Sunday. Now, aside from the famed atmosphere of this event, there are many iconic sections of this racecourse that we're going to go and take a little look at today, just to see what it is that keeps drawing people back year upon year to this corner of Bavaria. So first up with our iconic venues in the Roth course is the swim section, and this behind me is pretty impressive if you ask me, and it is actually the Rhine-Main-Donau Canal, which is part of a much greater European canal network, starting at the North Sea in Rotterdam, tracking all the way to the southeast of Europe and exiting into the Black Sea in Romania. So it's quite a feat of engineering, and essentially is one large swimming pool. It's about 60 to 80 meters wide here, and this particular section of the canal is split up into 15 or so large locks. And what that means is the organisers can cooperate with the canal operators to regulate the flow of water upstream. So if the water's getting a bit warm, they can have some cooler water flush through the canal network in the days leading up to the race, ensuring that this water is always just right for a wetsuit legal swim, meaning that there's always going to be faster swim times here in Roth. The athletes start just behind me and they track all the way up the canal here, doing an anti-clockwise loop that comes back down, hugging this canal bank that you can see down there behind that bridge in the far distance, and then exiting just there on this side of the bank up into transition. So we're on to the bike course now here in Challenge Roth, and there's a number of key hotspots that the organisers promote and organise. The first of which is this one here, little village of Eckelsmühle, and they turn this entire street corner that you see behind me into what they call the beer mile. Now, I don't think it is actually a full mile in length, but all these cars that you see parked behind me, they will be gone. That will be one long trestle table filled with people sitting, cheering all the athletes as they go by. I guess there'll be quite a bit of beer involved too, as it is the beer mile. But this corner essentially is a really good hotspot for people to see athletes early in the bike course and just before they finish. They go around this corner just in front of me, take a right, and they have the final 5k towards T2. So we're on to our next hotspot on the Roth bike course, and this is what the organisers term the Kalvarienberg hotspot. It's in the town of Grading, around about 35 k's on the athlete's first lap, and again at 120 k's on their second lap. And that's when the gradient of this climb is really going to pinch the athletes, because this ends up being the high spot of the entire Roth bike course. You can see the road climbing off up there behind me, and it's this gradient of 10% that really adds to the atmosphere on this particular hotspot, because as the athletes slow down to tackle that steeper gradient, they're pretty much at their slow speed on this entire Roth course. So the crowds can really line this street that runs behind me and cheer all the athletes on as they head on up that hill, which the organisers call the Hill of Pain. So not long after the Hill of Pain comes this next section of note in the bike course, which is a long sweeping section of hairpins like you can see behind me here, drops you down into the small village of Obermassing. And from my memories last year, these were really interesting parts of the course, because most of it is long, fast TT stretches when you're down in the bars, whereas here you suddenly have to think about a little bit of technical nature. And that is actually something that the organisers give everybody a heads up on in their race briefings, because it would be very easy to lose concentration and have a bit of a crash on these long fast descents when all you've been used to doing the rest of the course is staring at your aero bars. So yep, these corners are a really nice part of the course. So we've made it here to our final hotspot on the Roth bike course, the Solarburg Claim that you can see just behind me here. Possibly the most famed part of this whole Roth triathlon, and in fact arguably one of the most famed in the whole of the triathlon world, if you ask me. There's not many people who haven't heard about this quite famous stretch of road. Now, it's not particularly noted for the steepness, gradient, or even the length of this hill, because there's nothing particularly of note there. What is famous about the Solarburg Climb are the thousands, tens of thousands even, of spectators who congregate here during race day to cheer on the athletes or watch their friends and family competing from this really iconic section of the course. There's all sorts of stuff happening throughout the day. They've got DJs on course, they've got all sorts of big screens, there's food, drink, everything that people could need to really get a kind of Tour de France type of experience. So I've made my way onto the run course now, and I'm actually just before the first turning point, which is about the 10k marker. And this view that you can see behind me is, well, in my opinion, one of the iconic images, very striking, of the whole Challenge Roth course. I used to remember seeing pictures of this in the magazines when I was growing up back in the day. And in fact, until a couple of years ago, this is actually where almost the entire marathon happened here at Challenge Roth. It's an ideal surface for running on. It's a lovely soft gravel trail. It's entirely flat because it tracks the canal bank, the same canal that the triathletes were in first thing this morning for their swim. But the main problem is, and I guess you can kind of see that from behind me, is it's very lonely out here. There's almost nothing spectator-wise. And that a couple of years ago is something that the organisers decided to change. So to fix that, a couple of years ago, the organisers mixed up the marathon course to take away some of the distance from that lonely canal section, incorporating Roth town centre itself and other smaller communities on the fringes, such as this one here called Buchan Back. Now, this lake beside me is actually an extended turnaround point at approximately the 35k point on the marathon. So the ideal area to have one last motivational boost, which will come from all of the residents who line the path here and give loads of encouragement to the athletes as they have their final push towards the finish in Roth Town Centre. Well, it's been a real trip down memory lane having a look at all these iconic hotspots of the Roth course, and hopefully you've enjoyed seeing them as much as I have revisiting them. And indeed, if you're racing this weekend, I do hope that it has been of some use for your race prep. Hope you've enjoyed this video, so please hit that thumb up like button. Find the globe somewhere on screen to get all the other videos on our channel. And if you want to get some more detailed numbered stats about the whole Roth race, then you can find the video that Mark did here.